Come with me to Best Buy, Target, Gamestop, and even Walmart in search of the Nintendo Switch 2, the console. We're looking for games out here and even accessories. So let's go ahead and start with Best Buy. I made my way into this Best Buy. This is actually the Best Buy that I ended up picking up my Switch 2 on for the midnight release. I made my way into the store, and right off the bat, they had a sign that said that they were out of stock of Nintendo Switch 2 consoles, but that didn't deter me from going back to the very back where they have most of their video games. So I made my way back to there, where I ended up seeing from afar that they did still have games, which is totally awesome. And I made my way back to the game wall, where I ended up finding, of course, Mario Kart World. They had Zelda and Zelda Breath of the Wild and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Then they had a bunch of other games here that I had already picked up. I hadn't picked up this Raidu game, which did catch my eye, but then everything else I had seen already. So I headed over to the accessories here, where they did have a bunch of cool stuff here. They had Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, a wired controller there, a charging controller for your Joy-Cons if you wanted to dock them in that handheld machine. And then I made my way over here to obviously check that they didn't have any consoles. And that's when I noticed they had the demo for Donkey Kong Bonanza. I've already played the demo already once while I was at the Switch 2 event, but I ended up stopping and looking at it a little bit more just to see kind of if there was anything else I realized that I might have missed while I was playing it at the Switch 2 event. And I had a ton of fun, but honestly, no console here at Best Buy. Obviously, when I walked in the door, it was out of stock. But they did have a nice selection of games. Probably like 80% of the games that have been released physically or a game key card on the Switch were at Best Buy. But let's go ahead and go to Walmart and see if we can find some more stuff. So I made my way over to the Walmart that was near this Best Buy and headed into the store here. I made my way all the way back to the back where the electronics and the video games are. And that's when I realized that they did set up this nice kiosk here that wasn't here the last time I was here. And they also had a bunch of accessories here, but nothing new. This was all pretty much the same: Pro Controllers, Joy-Cons, that stuff. Then I made my way over to the game case, where they did actually have a decent selection, and I checked it out to see if there was anything new. The Puyo Tetris 2 was new. I didn't find that at Best Buy, as well as the Cyberpunk, but everything else here was actually at Best Buy. So a few games here that weren't at Best Buy, which is pretty interesting. I kind of expected to not find anything new at Walmart, since it is a retail store and not like video game or electronic centric like Best Buy is. But I was kind of surprised. They have been redoing this section though. So the last time I was there wasn't not PlayStation 2, a Switch 2. I'll probably do that in the future again. But they didn't have a Switch 2 section at all, but here they did. Obviously, there was a huge chunk of missing games down below. It was just those 2 rows, but there's not much that's come out on the console in the last month. So let's go ahead and head to GameStop and see if they have anything we haven't seen yet. So I made my way into the GameStop that is actually kind of connected to the Walmart through like a strip mall, but I ended up heading in there, and unfortunately, I have to say, this is probably the worst place that I've looked so far for Switch 2 stuff. I looked around, they only had maybe like 5 or 6 games actually in the store. They had a bunch more for displays, but nothing really here that was worth it. I did ask if they had any consoles, and unfortunately, they said everything we have is actually on the wall here. So if you're looking for any other games, you'll have to go to another GameStop. But honestly, I'm kind of surprised with GameStop here. Whenever the Switch 2 released, the day of, I went in there, they didn't really have any games for it. They had a few, but pretty much what you would expect, like Mario Kart World, the Zeldas of the world, and stuff like that, like you would expect, but they didn't have anything else, which is kind of a bummer. And here I walked in, they didn't have any consoles, which, to be fair, we haven't found any consoles from Best Buy or Walmart either, so that makes sense. But the games that they had were pretty much games that were at every other place, and there wasn't anything new. Or actually, both Walmart and Best Buy had more games than GameStop did when it came to the Switch 2, which is kind of a bummer. But we've got one more place to stop, and I think Target might be the best place right now to buy Switch 2 stuff, so let's head there now. So I made my way into this Target. This is the Target that I go to that's in my area that oftentimes I can get in and get out of really quickly. So I stopped here because I wanted to see if we could find any Switch 2 stuff. And actually, in my area, this one has the bigger Switch 2 section as well. So if I'm looking for Switch 2 games, this is probably where I'm going to go and buy them in the future. But for now, I headed all the way back to the back where the electronics section is, and I wandered and wandered, and then I made my way to it where I came to this end cap, which didn't have any Switch 2 stuff in it. It was all Switch 1 stuff. And then I turned the corner, and that's when I ended up seeing, you probably can already tell what it is, they actually had them in stock. There was 5 consoles here. They were all the Mario Kart World bundle, but they actually had some in stock. So here we are about a month later, and they actually had some in store, but those probably didn't last very long. I did check out the accessories. I thought about getting one of these cameras. Comment down below if you think I need to. This was a cool little game case there. And then I made my way to the games, which here, they kind of had the same games I've seen everywhere else. There was anything crazy. Now, they did actually have the most amount of games. I ended up seeing all of these games here and there, whether it was at Best Buy or at Walmart, and I guess you could say technically, if you want to, say GameStop. But then I had to stop and say one last thing to Mario before I got out of there while he was at the poll. But honestly, after going to these 4 places, I think in the future, if I go game hunting for Switch 2 games, whether it's next week, next month, next year, I think Target might actually be the place that I go to, at least for now, considering it had more games, more accessories, and had pretty much a bigger selection of things. You could find more accessories, other controllers that worked with it, or even the bags, which was pretty cool. And they ended up having the biggest selection of games, which is obviously what I'm going to buy after the fact that I already have a Switch 2, so the games are pretty much the next thing I have to have for it. So overall, if you have a Best Buy, a Walmart, a GameStop, or Target in your area, I'm gonna have to recommend, based on where I went, to go to Target first. Now, I know it's different in other cities, and wherever you are, I would suggest checking out all those places. But for me, in my area, if I'm going hunting in the future, Switch 2 related stuff is probably going to end up coming from Target, which is kind of where I buy a lot of my Switch games from when they released. Actually, there's one in the city that I live by that I go to more often, but this one in my city actually has a bigger selection than that one does. So I think going forward, I'm going to have to check out Target before I go to other places, just purely based on the section that I've seen so far. I do know, however, that Walmart is still working on theirs, so that is what it is. But the Switch 2 has been out a month, and it's already breaking records. It was reported that they have already sold over 5 million consoles, which is the fastest selling console, which is crazy for the first month. But again, there's people that I think the Switch 2 is very polarizing. It's either people love the Switch 2 or they hate the Switch 2, and there's no middle ground. So I want to know what you think. Comment down below. If you love the Switch, let me know. If you hate the Switch, don't be too mean in the comments, because that's how the internet's been for the last 3 months about the Switch 2. If you don't like it, that's cool, but don't hate on it too much, please. But I'm kind of interested to see what this month, July, has with Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out. I played the demo, you saw me, and I am super excited for this game. So if you have a Switch 2 and you are excited for games, comment those down below as well. But I got to get out of here because I want to play my Switch 2 some more. So check that video out right there if you haven't already. But I'm really excited about the Switch 2. I'll probably make more videos in the future. I'm not going to oversaturate it. This channel is still going to be mainly retro games, but I'll sprinkle some Switch 2 content in when I can. But enough about that. I'm going to get out of here, so check that video out if you haven't already.